Hi, I'm G. Welcome back to my art channel. And today I'm looking at Spectrum Noir Illustrator markers. Now these are a dual tip marker with a very important feature for me. They have a brush tip. So Spectrum Noir are quite a well-known brand of markers, but I had no idea that they did a marker that had a brush tip and that allegedly is also refillable. So I thought I'd pick up one of these little taster packs and have a little play with them and let you know what I thought about them. So this is just a little taster pack with just 4 colors, allegedly handpicked by a professional artist, who knows. And looking on the back, you can see that this is 4 shades of a kind of a pink color, which I thought might be useful if I did a marker picture of a flower. And there's the important bit at the bottom, basically explaining that they are a refillable kind of marker. So I thought I'd break them open, have a little look at them. And the first thing that struck me was, and I was kind of aware of this before, but they are a hexagonal shaped marker, not round, not kind of square, but hexagonal. And inside you've got the 4 markers plus this little booklety thing, like a little pamphlet pull-out thing. That kind of tells you, oh, they're alcohol markers, oh, you can layer them. And on the flip side of it, it had a whole bunch of different taster packs and the colors that they might have. So the markers have a nice solid feel to them, and they are hexagonal barrel shape, which is a Spectrum Noir thing, I think. Maybe it's part of their brand. The color names and the numbers are on the end of each of the tips, and the marker actually wasn't as chunky as I thought it was going to be. Here you can see it next to a Pro Marker brush marker. They've got a fine tip and a brush tip, and the fine tip is very, very, very thin, and the brush tip, well, you can see here, comparing it to Copics on the left and also Pro Markers on the right, pretty similar, just a little bit perhaps shorter than the Copic one. So the first thing that I thought I'd do is dive in on some Bleedproof paper and have a go using the very, very fine tip. So that's the first thing you can see me doing here. And I just decided to try them out on 2 papers, the 2 papers I use the most with markers, and that is Bleedproof and also some Bristol Board. So I was impressed with the firm, fine tip, but then I've got to have a go at blending because that's what markers are really all about. So I flicked the brush strokes down and I was using the very first color. This is cream, and I was blending them the way that I always do blend markers, and that is to work from my lightest color through to my darkest. So the second color was Portrait Pink, which you can see me flicking on while the cream is still wet, and still while everything is still wet, putting on my third color, which was Tea Rose. And then finishing off with my darkest final colour, which is called Rose Blush. And I'm just putting a bit of that in at the top, again, while all of the marker is still wet, because that will help it all kind of like blend together. Now, next door to that, I decided to do a layered approach, so slightly different from the blended approach. So with this one, I'm laying down the cream colour first of all, and I'm letting that dry. You can see what a lovely cream it becomes. And then when it's dry, I'm flicking down some strokes of the second colour, which is the Portrait Pink. And I'm going about 3/4 the way down, and then when I get to the end, I stop. I let that dry, and then when that's dried, I picked up the Tea Rose and I started flicking some short strokes of Tea Rose down on top. And when the Tea Rose is on and I've left that to dry, then I go back in with the Rose Blush, which is my darkest colour, and I just put some flick strokes from that at the top. And this is a layered approach. So with this approach, you're not trying to blend your colours together. You are just layering them on top of each other, letting them dry in between. And yes, you can see the brush marks a little bit more, but it's a different approach and it works more for some people. Here you can see me trying out the brush tip to see just how thin I can start with, and then applying more pressure, just how thick I can get with that brush stroke with some of those lines, and it was actually quite satisfying. Then I tried to do an undulating line, which was like thin to thick to thin to thick. And then just doing some little dots with the tip just to see how they came out. If I need to do something textured or speckled, how is that going to work for me? And then one last try to see just how thin I could get some little flick strokes with the brush tip. So when that one was finished, I decided to do the exact same approach on a piece of Bristol Board paper as well, so that I could then compare the 2 results at the end and see if there was like massive differences between them. Because like I said, these are the 2 papers that I use the most, so I really want to know how they're going to operate, how they're going to work on both. So I pretty much tried the same amount of mark making, blending, and so on. Here's a close-up on the Bleedproof, and you can see it's a little bit speckly, it's a little bit hazy, and a bit pale actually where I've tried to blend it, whereas the layered approach is a little bit stronger in colour, but of course you can see the brush strokes more. The Bristol Board has gone quite speckly where I tried to blend the colours together. I did put on a bit more ink to try and blend, but that speckly thing is something that I find that Copics do. As you can see, not so speckly on the layered approach. The layered approaches work nicely. So after a bit of a go with these, what are the pros and the cons of these markers? Well, I'll deal with the pros first of all. They had a good brush tip, it had a nice feel to it, it was easy and comfortable to use on the papers. The ink was smooth, it came out of the marker nice and smoothly and applied to the papers nice and smoothly. Despite them looking a bit funny because they're hexagonal, they were actually easy to hold and actually quite comfortable and reassuring in your grip. The fact that they are a refillable marker is awesome, and that is a definite pro for me. They're definitely cheap compared to Copics. If I was to compare them to, say, a Copic Chow marker, I think they're a couple of quid less. They're like maybe $2.50 in Britain, and I think that the inks that you can use to refill them with are about $5.99 for about 30 milliliters. I don't think Copics are that good. So the cons? Well, I gotta say that ink, when I was trying to blend them, that ink was looking a bit too speckly for my liking. I want to have a bit more of a play with them and maybe try out a few different papers. But if they got a speckled ink, that makes them pretty similar to the Copics, but being a lot cheaper, I might choose these over the Copics in future. The names not being on the barrel is a bit of a thing for me. I know that the names is on the tips and the numbers are on the tips, but I want to see the name on the barrel. If I mix those tips up, and I've got like different tips put on different markers, I'm going to end up using the wrong marker. So I want to be able to see the name of that marker on the barrel of the pen. The booklet that came with the box was okay, but it was a bit kind of filler. I felt a little booklet that comes with your markers should give you a few more ideas and hints and tips on exactly what to do, rather than be a bit of a kind of a puff piece, for want of a better word. So, would I recommend them? I think right now, yes I would. I'm going to do a follow-up video to this one where I use them on a real drawing. But right now, the brush tip and the price are enough to make me very interested in these. If you use these markers, then let me know in the comments below what you think of them, whether you would recommend them or whether you've got some misgivings with them. Can you suggest an alternative? Please like and subscribe if you got something out of the video or you just enjoyed it. And thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.